coming forward. Here comes Holyfield, but he gets caught by a short right hand from Riddick. He's hurt, Joe. He is hurt badly.
On November 13th, 1992, at the Thomas & Mack Center in Las Vegas, Evander Holyfield sat on his stool with his face a map of swollen tissue and broken resolve. He had just endured 12 rounds of attrition against a younger, larger Riddick Big Daddy Bowe, losing his undisputed heavyweight crown in a bout widely considered the most brutal of the decade. Holyfield's heart was never in question, but his physical ceiling seemed reached. Critics argued that the former cruiserweight king was simply too small to withstand the 235-pound frame of a prime Bowe. This loss wasn't just a scorecard defeat. It was a structural demolition that forced Holyfield to reconsider his entire approach to the sport before a rematch could even be whispered. By November 6, 1993, the narrative for the rematch at Caesar's Palace was billed as repeat or revenge. Holyfield had undergone a radical tactical shift, parting ways with trainers Lou Duva and George Benton to hire a manual steward of the Kronk Gym. His objective was surgical: use lateral movement to negate Bowe's reach and exploit the champion's noticeable lack of conditioning. Bowe entered the ring at a career-high 246 pounds, appearing sluggish compared to the 217-pound hyper-focused Holyfield. As the opening bell rang in the outdoor arena, the strategy became manifest. Holyfield avoided the pocket, instead darting in with 1-2 combinations and clinching, before Bowe could unload his trademark inside uppercut. Through the first 6 rounds, Holyfield's discipline paid dividends as he built a lead on all 3 judges' scorecards. He was beating Bowe to the punch, landing crisp hooks that rattled the champion's headgear in the cool 40-degree desert air. Then, at exactly 10:48 p.m. during the 7th round, a low mechanical drone began to drown out the roar of the 15,000 fans. Referee Mills Lane noticed the fighter's eyes drifting upward toward the night sky. High above the ring, a motorized paraglider appeared as a dark silhouette against the bright Vegas lights. James Miller, an amateur pilot later known as the Fan Man, was descending directly toward the ring, his parachute lines dangerously tangling in the overhead lighting rig. Chaos erupted as Miller's paraglider snagged on the ropes of the ring's apron, leaving him dangling just inches from Riddick Bowe's corner.
He loves that.
Security and members of Bowe's entourage, including manager Rock Newman, immediately swarmed the intruder, striking him as he remained tangled in his gear. The fight was instantly halted, marking one of the most surreal interruptions in sports history. While the crowd spiraled into a frenzy and Bowe's pregnant wife, Judy, fainted from the stress, Holyfield remained eerily composed. He retreated to his corner, draped himself in a thermal blanket, and paced the canvas to prevent his muscles from seizing during what would become a 21-minute delay. As the clock ticked toward 11:10 p.m., the ring was finally cleared of the paraglider's debris. Referee Mills Lane, a man known for his "let's get it on" mantra, faced a logistical nightmare, restarting a heavyweight championship bout after a 21-minute freeze. The temperature at Caesar's Palace had dipped to a bone-chilling 40 degrees Fahrenheit. For Riddick Bowe, the delay was a psychological anvil. His wife, Judy, had been carried out on a stretcher following a fainting spell during the chaos. Conversely, Evander Holyfield had spent the hiatus shadowboxing in his corner, draped in a silver thermal robe to keep his muscles from tightening. When Lane finally signaled for the fighters to touch gloves and resume the 7th round, the dynamic of the fight had shifted from a tactical chess match to a test of cold-weather endurance. The resumption of the 7th round saw Holyfield immediately exploit Bowe's lack of focus. Bowe, weighing a career-high 246 pounds, looked heavy-footed and distracted, his eyes occasionally darting toward the tunnel where his wife had been taken. Holyfield, under the strict guidance of Emmanuel Stewart, didn't let the champion breathe. He initiated a high-volume assault, landing a crisp 3-punch combination, left hook, right cross, left hook, that snapped Bowe's head back. The strategy was clear: force the larger man to move his feet in the frigid desert air. Every time Bowe tried to plant himself to deliver his devastating inside uppercut, Holyfield would pivot 45 degrees, forcing Bowe to reset his stance and burn precious energy. By the end of the 8th, Bowe's breathing was labored. his mouth agape as he struggled to process the altitude and the intensity. Entering the 10th round, the fight devolved into a grueling war of attrition that mirrored their first encounter, but with a critical tactical difference. Holyfield was no longer standing in the phone booth with Bowe. Following the instructions Stewart had hammered into him at camp, Evander used a stiff jab to the chest to disrupt Bowe's rhythm before darting out of range. In the 11th, Bowe managed to trap Holyfield against the ropes, landing a thudding right hand that momentarily buckled the challenger's knees. However, Holyfield's conditioning, honed by intensive plyometric training, allowed him to recover instantly. He fired back with a 5-punch sequence that forced Bowe to retreat. The statistics were telling. Holyfield was out-throwing the champion by a margin of nearly 20 punches per round, a staggering feat for a man who had been diagnosed with a heart condition just months prior. The 12th and final round was a display of pure heavyweight grit. Both men were spent, their faces swollen from the 40-degree wind and the impact of 10-ounce Cleto Reyes gloves. Bowe, sensing his title slipping away, threw caution to the wind, lunging with desperate overhand rights. Holyfield remained disciplined, clinching when necessary and landing short, choppy hooks in the final 30 seconds. When the final bell rang at roughly 11:40 p.m., the atmosphere in the outdoor arena was thick with tension.
Parachute, and he literally landed in the ring. That was in an outdoor arena in Vegas, is that what it was?
Well, sure, it made and held the fight up about 30 minutes.
That was crazy.
The Fan Man incident had turned a standard rematch into a 3-hour odyssey. As the fighters waited for the decision, Holyfield stood tall in his corner, while a dejected Bowe sat on his stool, his head bowed. The scorecards would reflect the razor-thin margins of the evening: 115, 113, 115, 114, and 114, 114. With the majority decision victory, Evander Holyfield became only the third man in history, after Muhammad Ali and Floyd Patterson, to regain the heavyweight championship of the world. The WBA and IBF belts draped over him stood in stark contrast to the chaotic descent of James Miller just an hour earlier. For Riddick Bowe, it was the first professional loss of his career, a defeat he would later attribute to the distraction of the paraglider and his own poor conditioning. As the Las Vegas crowd filtered out into the night, the 1993 rematch was cemented not just as a tactical masterpiece by Holyfield and Emanuel Stewart, but as the night the most bizarre interruption in boxing history failed to break the focus of the real deal. As the decision was read, the Caesars Palace ring transformed into a sea of silk warm-up suits and flashing cameras. HBO's Larry Merchant pushed through the throng to reach the newly crowned 3-time champion.
The WBC version of the championship from Matt Parloff. Early in '79, Rossman and Galint and Johnson will defend against Franklin. But perhaps the best light heavyweight of them all waits in.
Holyfield, despite the freezing 40-degree temperatures and the 21-minute disruption, remained remarkably composed. He explained that during the Fan Man delay, he didn't sit down. He kept his muscles warm by pacing the ring, a tactical decision that prevented his legs from seizing up. In contrast, Riddick Bowe had spent the intervals seated, covered in blankets, a move that Holyfield's trainer Emanuel Stewart later claimed was the turning point. The physical evidence was clear. Holyfield's work rate in the 8th round, immediately following the restart, saw him land 25 of 46 power punches, seizing the momentum that Bowe never truly recovered. If you appreciate these deep dives into boxing history, consider joining our community by hitting the subscribe button below. While Holyfield celebrated, the catalyst for the night's chaos, James Miller, was experiencing a far more brutal reality. After being dragged from the ring ropes, Miller was swarmed by Riddick Bowe's security detail and angry spectators. One member of Bowe's camp reportedly struck Miller over the head 20 times with a large Motorola walkie-talkie, leaving the paraglider unconscious and bleeding profusely. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police eventually extracted Miller, zip-tying his hands and transporting him to Valley Hospital. He was later charged with dangerous operation of an aircraft and held on a $5,000 bond. The Fan Man later joked that it was the only time a heavyweight fight started with a paraglider and ended with a surgical procedure. But the levity masked the fact that he had nearly been killed by the very crowd he intended to entertain. The official scorecards revealed just how much the Fan Man incident had skewed the optics of the fight. Judge Jerry Roth scored it 115-113, Chuck Giampa had it 115-114, and Patricia Morse-Jarman turned in a 114-114 draw. The majority decision meant that if Bowe had won just one more round on 2 of the cards, he would have retained his titles. Bowe's manager, Rock Newman, was incensed, pointing to the chaos of the 7th round as a primary reason for Bowe's loss of focus. However, the CompuBox stats told a more objective story. Holyfield landed 253 of 474 punches, a 53% connect rate, while Bowe landed 202 of 485. Holyfield's accuracy, particularly with the left hook that repeatedly found Bowe's chin in the championship rounds, was the definitive factor that swayed the judges in the outdoor Nevada air. For Riddick Bowe, the loss was a harsh lesson in the perils of complacency. He had entered the ring at 246 pounds, 11 pounds heavier than he was for their first encounter in 1992. His trainer, Eddie Futch, expressed visible frustration in the corner throughout the night as Bowe's jab, which had dominated the first fight, became lazy and intermittent. The cold weather exacerbated Bowe's breathing difficulties, and the 21-minute delay allowed the lactic acid to settle in his massive frame. This defeat marked the end of Bowe's reign as the undisputed king, and began a period of physical decline from which his career would never fully recover. He left the ring that night without his belts, his undefeated record shattered, and his reputation as the successor to the legends of the 70s significantly tarnished. The 1993 rematch didn't just impact the fighters, it nearly resulted in a medical emergency for the Bowe family. During the paragliding intrusion, Bowe's wife, Judy, who was several months pregnant at the time, fainted from the stress and the sight of the mid-air collision. She was rushed to a nearby hospital for observation, while her husband was still fighting in the ring. This personal distraction weighed heavily on Bowe during the restart. Meanwhile, Holyfield's camp was dealing with their own hurdles, having been told by doctors months earlier that he had a stiff heart and should retire. Holyfield's performance was a medical anomaly. He proved that his aerobic capacity was not only intact, but superior to a man 6 years his junior. To ensure you don't miss our next breakdown of legendary sports moments, make sure to ring the notification bell. As the lights finally dimmed over the Caesars Palace parking lot, the legacy of November 6, 1993, was etched into boxing lore. It remains the only world heavyweight title fight to be interrupted by an airborne intruder, a fact that often overshadows the technical brilliance displayed by both athletes.
Been a lot more effective before the start of these fights.
Well, I tell you, it's just that of
And he waits. Whereas Stewart with the uppercut. Holyfield with the left that score.
Holyfield's victory evened the score in what would become one of boxing's greatest trilogies, setting the stage for their 1995 rubber match. But that night, the focus was on the real deal's resilience. He had navigated a chaotic outdoor arena, a 21-minute circus act, and a 246-pound giant to reclaim his throne. The Fan Man fight was a testament to the unpredictable nature of live sports, where even a man falling from the sky couldn't derail the iron will of Evander Holyfield. James Miller's 15 minutes of fame ended in a jail cell and a lifetime ban from all Caesars properties.
Something has changed within me. It's not the same. I'm through with playing by the rules.
He would later attempt similar stunts at a Raiders game and in the UK, but he would never again capture the world's attention like he did that November night in Vegas. For the sport of boxing, the event led to a permanent change in security protocols for outdoor venues, with no-fly zones becoming standard for major pay-per-view events. The 1993 Holyfield-Bowe rematch stands as a bizarre, unrepeatable moment in time, a night where the heavyweight championship of the world shared the spotlight with a man in a paraglider, and somehow, the boxing was still the most impressive thing we saw. Thanks for watching this retrospective. For more untold stories from the ring, check out our playlist on the screen now.